Mark, here we go. Welcome to Bite Size Dental Marketing. It's the
Hello,
read
hello,
of the week.
hello. Oh, yeah. One of my favorites, Eric.
Let's get literary.
Let's do it. Hannah, I'm sorry that your ear's infected. Looks a little large today, but I'm going to go ahead and jump in.
My ear is not infected for all you out there listening.
What you're saying, you slept in Bose and it had been inflamed and was bleeding. But
Quite
no, it doesn't look
No.
it doesn't look terrible. It doesn't look terrible. It's just a little larger than the left one. I finished reading a book, Boyd Vardy, Lion Tracker's Guide to Life. I had to finish it with both the actual physical book as well as the audio book as I was driving back and taking the girls to camp.
You finished that one quick, Eric, because you were talking about
But
how you that
it's not. It's not that.
Still impressing. So impressive. Still impressive. I take
I
time
try
with
to be
books,
impressing.
Eric.
Well,
it's like, right, that's not a word.
I will say that this book started slow for me, but it really picked up well. And just to recap it, this guy Boyd Vardy, he works on the Londolozi Game Reserve in South Africa, and he and his friends are lion trackers. Now he's a professional speaker and stuff, but let's pause on the real story and get to the story. But he does track these lions so that they can call back to the lodge and tell the safari people where they're at, so they can then take the guests to see the pride of lions or see the elephants or the hippos or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of things I liked about the book. The one was, like nothing in the wild needs a coach to tell it who it is, right? Like there's an innate sense of who we are. And he talks a lot about, and I'm summarizing the book very succinctly, but how when you're tracking something, there are signs, and like it's so easy to ignore the signs because you're looking for this like fresh paw print. But in reality, you should be looking for, sand that has been laid on grass from where their paw picked it up and set on the grass. You should be looking for broken branches, and you should be listening for like other little wildlife around that says how far or close they are. And like, as we go through life, we sometimes ignore our path because we're looking for these like clear signs. And then we get a clear sign and it's like, oh, that can't be right.
Yeah.
But
and then you doubt it.
There was one part of the book that then you doubt it, and then you find yourself you're on the wrong path. But there was one part of the book that hit me really hard, and I don't know if it just got me as I hit, time to start thinking about retirement, or as, we've been doing the agency for a decade now, but I do kind of find myself, comparing myself to others, comparing myself to why are we not, a $40 million company, or why are we not something crazy? And he talked about, if you can see your path, right? If you can stop and look at your path in front of you, that's not your path. Like that's someone else's path you're looking at. And because your path is behind you and you haven't made the decisions yet on what path to take. And by just the act of looking ahead at your path, you're comparing yourself to the person who was before you. You're not, that's not your path. And if I take nothing away from that book, it's, to pay attention to the signs of life, and that, the path that's laid out before me is not my path. It's someone else's. And he put into words something that I've always felt, and it had to do with in life. It's I don't know where I'm going, but I know exactly how I'm going to get there. And he talks about, my words are, I want to be fair, loving, and stable. And if you look inward at who you want to be and you stay true to that, and pay attention to the trail of life, you're going to make the right decisions. And it was a wonderful little book. It is a short read, and it's just so well done with lots of little anecdotal stories and stuff. But yeah, if you can see your path, if you can see the path in front of you, then that's that by definition that can't be your path.
Mm.
And it was
I
pretty
like that.
powerful. It was a good book.
I think that
Yeah.
if you focus too much on what you expect your life to be, then you can't live your life how you're meant to live it because there's no way for us to know what's going to happen, what's going to come next. And I think that's a beautiful part of life, also a scary part of life. But like if I look back, no way in hell did I think I would be living in South Africa or um and I mean even when I first spoke to you, Eric, I didn't think I'd be working at a dental marketing company. And there's so many things that you can't look forward and expect your path to go a certain way,
Mhm.
otherwise you're going to miss out on life. And there's so many beautiful
Mm.
things that come from just living from your understanding where you've been to get to where you need to go.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah,
I
that's so
like it.
true. And one other thing, Eric, that you also said in the last read of the week that we spoke, and I'd said to you, what was probably my favorite line is nothing in the wild, or you're gonna have to help me a bit here, but is nothing in the
Hmm.
wild needs to be taught how to be themselves or how to be itself.
Right.
Is that correct? I'm paraphrasing, but that hit
That.
so hard for me because we're in a generation of everything we try and do, whether it's on social media, with stuff is we're bombarded with information on how to invest our money, how
Hmm.
to be as a person, how to be a good person, how to
How to
be
look and behave.
everything. And that just took me back to being yourself, and being you is absolutely perfect if you're doing right by yourself. Just make sure you're doing right by yourself and by your family. And that
Hmm.
means everything from being smart with your money, being conscious of your health, being a good person, trying to be the best person you can be. But just don't try and compare yourself, as you said now, to 6,000, 10 million other people, because you'll exhaust yourself. And I think that book really hits it spot on for that message.
Yeah, it's a good read. It the you hit on the main theme. The main theme is to look inward and decide who you are. And obviously the book covers a lot of ground, but it is it. Like nothing in the wild needs a coach to tell it who it is. I think that was the quote.
That's a
And
good.
it was about if yeah, if you look inward
Sorry,
and
all you
decide
life
who
coaches out there.
if you look inward and decide who you are, then at that point you can begin to be who you want to be. And as soon as you do that, you actually begin to affect the outside world because like we're all drawn to someone who is inherently true to themselves.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you start affecting change. And and then I've already covered the following the trails of life and the comparisons. Comparison is the enemy of joy, sort of thing. And yeah, Hannah and I were talking about that, around aging. And it's true. Like if I look back at where I've come, it's unremarkably amazing. I mean, I'm remarkably amazing. Sorry. It's just, from what I was born to my problems through education to, I can remember when I graduated high school and my dad was a good man, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he went to his boss and got me a job as a laborer on the railroad. My dad worked on the railroad. And like, that's just kind of what I was destined for. Like, like my dad didn't expect me to go to college or anything like that. And that's not that he didn't have expectations from me. I think he was just trying to be realistic about the son he had at that time.
Or to
But
go from
then,
working. Who did the recep was it the receptionist at the from going from I'll just help out a bit here to the CEO of the company going, who's this Eric guy that everybody
uh-huh,
says I need to call to help figure out how to use this? That's one of my best
uh-huh.
stories
Yeah.
of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, to go from that to, running a company that ultimately, has a positive impact on the 22 souls that, work for it. Like, how is that not successful? But I will tell you, when you put me in a room with other business owners or agency owners that are, 20, 30, $40 million in revenue, and they have second houses here and they're spending a year on vacation. They're spending a year working out of Europe for this reason. Like, I'm like, man, how am I not doing it right? But in reality, I'm just comparing myself to that. That's not my path.
Mm-hmm.
When you actually
Mm-hmm.
could be the one doing it right, because I think a lot of times we use finances as a scale of success.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at people who have the most money, they generally tend to have the most issues in their lives, and
Yeah.
arguably might be the least happy people. Um, so I think, Eric, that everyone who looks at you sees a lot immense success.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm inspired by how you strive to grow constantly, to be a better person, to be a better boss. So I look at you and I see a lot of success.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and that's what
What
it's
did you
about.
read though?
I I can
No, thank
jump
you.
in on. It is actually a self-help book. Funny enough, we were just joking
Mm.
about sorry
That's
self-help,
that's
but
the opposite of what
but
we're doing.
but I wouldn't see this as self-help in the same way I think that we were just talking about in Eric's book, but rather how to look at life. I'm sure all of our listeners are familiar with all of Carnegie's books, Dale Carnegie's books. Um, Obviously, a visionary in USA and in writing in literature in the USA in terms of self-help and understanding the world. And one of his most famous, the basics how to win friends and influence people. I'm sure, Eric, you've heard of
Mm-hmm.
that book by
Mm-hmm.
Dale Carnegie.
Now, did you actually read the book?
Yes, and how I know I did read it
I,
is I found a 2019 LinkedIn article by myself that I wrote a summary of. This is the basics that I learned, and it kind of starts out with, for the past week, I've been listening to one of Dale Carnegie's best-selling books titled How to Win Friends and Influence People, published back in
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
1936, which is crazy. Um, and then it just goes in. I just summarized it on the chapters and stuff. So yes, I did read to it, Eric. But
I read a quote one time that is the most bought and quoted book that people have never read.
that is,
Uh-huh.
because people find little pieces of it and they're like, "That sounds amazing."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll put
But
that
no,
in.
but very few, the number of people who quote it to the people who've read it are very, very out of alignment. Right.
Yeah.
I have
And
never read it, but
have
I
you
know
not?
what it's
Okay.
about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Mm-mm.
and for me, I mean, I just love it because uh, myself, I'm a storyteller. I know, Eric, you're also a storyteller in how you like to convey a message, or and that's really what Dale Carnegie does so well in this book. He brings it
Mm-hmm.
to real life stories. He gives examples of life. From one of his important ones that he meant: don't criticize, condemn, or complain too much. The truth is that by criticizing, you don't solve the problem at all in any way ever. Which was something I bolded it here in my article that I wrote. I won't bore you guys with reading the whole thing, but that was one that stood out to me. Then give honest and sincere appreciation. Remember to smile. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Um, like just all of those headings, like that's just some of the headings that I dotted down here. I mean, that's advice that all people should hear. And I really encourage our listeners, if you've heard the quotes but you've not read it yet, he reads the book. And Eric, just like you said, the book that you're reading, also the author himself actually read the book. Like Dale Carnegie read the book. It's really, really good. It's um, something that, even if you don't agree with all of it, you'll definitely find something interesting that you can take from, just to be a better human being and how you treat people. So that's my read of the week.
Very nice. That was very nice, Hannah.
I
We're on a speed round here. Sorry, you.
have
Go
a
ahead.
really good one, but I don't remember where it is. But essentially, it was just this guy posted about how um, there's actually were laws put into place way back when, that children would that they didn't want to create creative, innovative, inventor type children in schools. They wanted
Hmm.
everyone to just go to school and learn this, this, and this, but they were trying really hard to actually not only not encourage kids to be like innovative and think like an inventor and an artist and all of that. And they were not just not encouraging creativity, they were discouraging creativity. So the I can't remember who it is, and I wish I could because it was really really interesting. But there was actual like laws written down that children would not go to school to learn to be creative. And I think that that's played off really, really, really way too long. And if you look at today's time, I mean, we were all taught the exact same things. We weren't taught to be creative, to excel in certain ways. And this was playing off of what you were saying earlier, in that we look to others and to try and decide who we need to be. And I think often our generation and your generation was discouraged from being anything other than the mold that we were expected to be, whether that be by our educational institutions or people around us. But I do feel like we're in a positive change in the world right now, that people are being more encouraged to be more
Hmm.
than just the person who
Hmm.
goes to school, goes to college, and gets this job, but someone who goes and learns to utilize their true and talents that they were born with to help make the world a better place.
Hmm. That's like Walt Disney. It goes back as far as Walt Disney. What you're saying, it's that famous story
Hmm.
of um, Walt, flowers don't have faces. He said, "Well, mine do," and I think that
Hmm.
speaks so much to that.
Yeah. Nice. Well, that wraps up the read of the week. I'll link to the things we read below, and see you next week.
Weed of the week, Eric. What have you been doing
Weed
in that podcast
The weed
room?
of the week. The weed of the week.
read of the week. The weed of
Thank
the
you, Eric.
week.
It's always good to be here with you, and I'm
Thanks,
excited
Eric.
for next Friday.
Hmm.
Next Friday, I'm gonna find my piece that I was talking about now to read.
Okay, I hope your infection goes down by next Friday.